Hello my fiery friends, the Infernoman here with a simple question I want to ask everyone here. For those that are unaware, we're going to get the Khans of Tarkir full set coming to Arena in about a week, actually less than a week now as of the posting of this video. But the question as to why that's a big deal is because we're going to be getting the fetch lands added into Arena for an upcoming set, which is basically called the Timeless format. You'll be able to play with the fetch lands that are currently used in Eternal paper formats such as Modern, Vintage, and Legacy, but now we can do it on Arena. Actually, this question came to us from a viewer on the channel, which simply reads, how is a fetch land better than an Evolving Wilds?
Good question.
Well, I'm glad you asked, because we're about to talk about a little in depth about what that means for us. So for those of you who actually don't play those other formats, let's actually go over first some of the actual fetches you can currently play in Arena. But before we continue, if you do like any of the content that I do, please like, follow, and subscribe wherever you watch the content so you don't miss out on any of the gameplay, booster pack openings, deck decks, and so much more. So with that, let's go ahead and let's cover now what's available currently in Arena. In the very beginning, the one and only Evolving Wilds and its counterpart Terramorphic Expanse. Both of them do the exact same thing, which where it says, you tap to sack the land, you search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield, tap, then shuffle. Nothing really super crazy about that. It helps you fix. It's not anything super amazing, but you'll see why the fetch lands that we are going to get are such a big deal in comparison to the OGs themselves. From the streets of New Capenna, we also got some additional ones. They are a little bit more restrictive, but they also give us one tiny benefit, and each of them are Broker's Hideout, Cabaret Courtyard, Maestro's Theater, Obscura Storefront, and River's Overlook. As you can see, it simply says, when this land enters the battlefield, you have to sacrifice it immediately. And when you do, you search for your library for a basic of whichever respective type it is. For example, here, River's Overlook says it has to be either a swamp, mountain, or forest card. You put it onto the battlefield tap, shuffle, and then you gain 1 life. The only major difference, of course, is that little bit of life gain. It is a little more restrictive compared to Terramorphic Expanse and Evolving Wilds, but depending on your deck itself will determine whether or not these are actually viable for you. Additional lands we actually got this year were Shire Terrace and Promising Vein. These ones allow you to actually tap for mana, which makes them a little bit different and more utilitarian than versus the other ones we just talked about. But they simply do the same thing, although it does cost us a little bit more. Shire Terrace, for example, here simply says, aside from tapping to add 1 colorless, you can also pay 1, tap this land to sack it, and then search your library for a basic land card, you put it onto the battlefield tap, then shuffle. Aside from that cost, it's exactly the same as Terramorphic Expanse and Evolving Wilds. The next one doesn't technically count as a fetch land, it's more of like land destruction, but it does fetch something out, which is Field of Ruin. Field of Ruin here also can allow you to tap it for some colorless mana, but also for 2 when you tap it, you have to sacrifice the land, destroying a target non-basic land an opponent controls, and then each of you will have to search your library for a basic land card and put it onto the battlefield, tap to shuffle. Fable Passage came to us from the original Eldraine set. This rare land simply says, when you tap to sack it, you search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. Here's where the difference comes in, however. If you control 4 or more lands, you untap that land. That's where the biggest difference is compared to the other fetch lands that we currently have. Of all of these, Fable Passage, of course, is the only one here that allows you to actually get your land untapped. But however, the biggest thing that all of them do still is they only allow you to fetch basics. Why is this such a big deal?
Good question.
Well, I'm also glad you asked that question. Here now is where we're going to talk about why fetch lands are so amazing and also so powerful. The example we're going to use on screen right now will be Polluted Delta, which is definitely going to be one of the fetches you will see soon in Arena. Polluted Delta, as you can see here, is a fetch land that reads, you pay 1 life, tap, and sacrifice the land. You search your library for an island or swamp card, and then put it onto the battlefield. You then shuffle your library. Notice, of course, the wording is very different here than what you see from what we just saw with, say, Evolving Wilds. The biggest difference, of course, it says you can pick an island or swamp card. This means that it doesn't have to be a basic land. That is already why this is extremely powerful for what it's capable of doing. The other major part that you saw here also says you can put it onto the battlefield. It does not have to come into play tapped. This right here is exactly why these lands are extremely powerful and are going to be a game changer when they come into Timeless format on Arena. So to put it another way, the biggest advantage you're going to have, of course, in utilizing fetches is you will have a lot more consistency with how you can build your decks in terms of ensuring that you can play what you need to on time. And also, this will thin out your deck to make sure that you will never have dead draws. I mean, keep in mind, fetches can not only pull out shock lands for you and add them to the battlefield, they can also pull out triomes. That is insanely awesome value. And that's, again, another reason why these lands are so powerful for what they're capable of doing. Of course, it's not all sunshine and rainbows for fetch lands. There are going to be some downsides, namely 3 of them specific. So, one big downside to fetch lands is they can get, of course, very painful for your mana base. What do I mean by that? As you just read, I said that the fetch lands themselves will charge you, of course, to pay 1 life. The other thing is, if you are going to be super aggressive with your mana base, this also means that, say, if you are fetching out, say, a shock land with your lands, you will also have to deal with the fact that you're going to take some damage, of course, to do all that. So if you're going to play them untapped as you also sack the fetch, you're going to take 3 life in order just to fix your mana. For some people out there, yes, this may seem a little bit painful, but keep in mind that, again, certain decks out there don't mind to deal with this, and also sometimes it may be a benefit for the fact that they allowed themselves to be a lot more aggressive and can have much more consistency with their deck. The other second downside to it, of course, is you're going to have to be a little bit more savvy with how you build your decks. Keep in mind that this does mean that you're going to have to play around with your fetches and determine which ones you need, which ones you don't need, to ensure that you can get the right colors out when you need it. But of course, the biggest downside to this whole thing being added into Arena is this is going to get very expensive for everyone. We're talking all the fetches are rares, so that means you'll have to pay a lot of wild cards to make this mana base work, to then fetch out more rare lands to get your mana base to be exactly what you want it to be. So some of us out there are going to get really screwed over in terms of how much we're going to have to spend.
I'm in danger!
But otherwise, aside from that, fetches, of course, are just going to be another boon to it. Remember that, again, if you're going to play, say, it like a mono color deck, you actually don't need fetches in order to be a really good deck. But otherwise, that wraps it up for this video, everyone. I know it was a very small, quick little video just to address one major question that I'm sure many of you out there have. Also, because many of us out there who are playing on Arena probably don't actually have actual fetch lands in paper. I know I haven't because they're a little too expensive, even though I spend a lot of money on packs. But in any case, that's a whole different discussion. The point I'm trying to make right now is, for those of you out there, of course, who are interested in playing in a more high-powered format, if you are fascinated by that, definitely, if you're like me, you're going to want to give the timeless format a try. If you are still on the fence about whether or not you want to invest in fetches using all of your rare wildcards, I would say hold on for a second and let's see if maybe you and I out there can build some monocolored decks first for the format, maybe some budget and non-budget variants. So if you are interested, you can slowly build up your collection that way. But I can assure you, if you do invest on the fetches in Arena, you'll definitely get some utility out of it if you play in the timeless format, and I assure you they will do exactly what you want them to do, and you will not be disappointed. That's all I have for you today. Thanks again for watching, everyone, and just remember that no matter what you do play in the game of life, always be sure to burn bright. Later!